Well, it's that time again. It's Mad About Markets, and today Ritu and I are going to discuss something extremely special, Ritu.
It is because, it's all over, especially up in the air, right? With Chandrayaan, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. It's actually the drones. Because, with the ideaForge, IPO and whatnot, that's really been on top of mind and on top of our heads.
Worrying sound that we have. It's literally taking off the industry. I mean, what can I say?
Well, we hope it doesn't crash land like that, but we'll tell you more in just a bit.
So let's dive straight in. This looks like a cute little hobbyist thing, but that's what it is. From an industry standpoint, it's being used in a lot of places, but at the same time, investors, they are lapping up on anything drones.
I mean, if the recent IPOs are anything to go by.
Or Zentech, which has rallied over 250% this year itself.
Just from the use of the word drone, like you said, right? So let's talk about the uses of drones, because, the first known use of drones was for defense purposes. Naturally, that was by Israel in the Arab-Israeli war back in 1973. But since then, their applications have expanded rapidly, with the United States also adopting them for military operations in the 1990s. Now, drones are revolutionizing multiple sectors, and that includes your defense, civil services, agriculture, media and entertainment, mapping, surveying, as well as logistics and delivery. And these are just to name a few. Their versatility and efficiency makes them an invaluable asset across various industries. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Mad About Markets. I'm Ritu Singh, and with me as always, Mangalam Maloo.
Well, so let's go straight in. We invited the drone guests. Let's talk about the people themselves. We have Ankit Mehta, who's the co-founder and CEO of ideaForge, the IPO that everyone's been talking about. Agnishwar Jayaprakash, who's the founder and CEO of Garuda Aerospace, joins in too. Gentlemen, thank you for joining in. Agnishwar, the question that begets asking is, what really happened in the last few years for the drone industry to suddenly get so much attention? Anything specific?
I would say there was a forcible adoption post the COVID period, and the pandemic definitely helped in the automation. But I believe that the liberalization of the drone rules in 2020 and 2021 had a lot to do with a lot of investors as well as companies like Garuda Aerospace scaling up. We were also greatly benefited as a company as well as the industry when the Honorable Prime Minister launched 100 of Garuda's drones in 100 different locations. Traditionally, we have seen only drones being adopted in the B2G defense as well as large government departments using them. But we have started to see, especially in the last couple of years, consumers and private industries adopting drone-based technologies to increase efficiency and reduce expenses.
The Indian government has taken some significant steps to embrace this technology. In July 2022 itself, the Defense Ministry approved a budget of approximately $88 million to acquire drones for various purposes. And soon after, in October 2022, several requests for proposals were issued, including procurement plans for military surveillance, special forces, Himalayan surveillance, and border activity tracking as well. In order to encourage the growth of the drone industry, the Indian government has also relaxed several guidelines. Drones are now permitted to operate within green zones, and non-commercial use of micro-drones no longer requires any remote pilot license, which was earlier difficult to get by. Additionally, foreign-owned or controlled Indian companies face no restrictions in operating drones within the country. And that's not all. The government has also allowed drones to carry heavier payloads, expanding their capabilities. So maybe soon the logistics industry will get some more usage of drones too.
And one of the biggest drivers for all of this has been the Make in India push. That initiative has played a crucial role in fostering the growth of the drone industry. Now, the Production-Linked Incentive Scheme, or the PLI scheme as we know it, that aims to attract an investment of $600 million, creating 10,000 jobs in the sector. The amendment of the drone rules in 2021 and the ban on drone imports, that also further encourages domestic production of drones, which is boosting the country's self-reliance in this sector. Now, the Swamitra scheme, which was launched in April of 2021, that focuses on establishing clear ownership of property in rural areas, and by leveraging geospatial technology in drones, the scheme aims to provide a record of rights to village household owners, which grants them legal ownership cards. So multiple uses there, and over 6 lakh villages are now being mapped, and a 3D pan-India mapping of 100 Indian cities is also underway as we speak.
That's about, the opportunities that the Indian government, the platform the Indian government is providing for the drone industry. But the PLI scheme, you spoke about that. Ankit, I just wanted to know, how is the industry de-risking from the PLI? Will there be any economic unviability if the PLI is taken away or post-sunset?
If you look at the overall construct of the business, and if you look at just the regular gross margins that the business has, the business is very healthy in that one sense. And as the business is growing and as the overall market opportunity is growing, I don't think the PLI scheme has to be looked at as an incentive for indigenization for more and more technology areas and more opportunities, rather than it being looked at as a driver for profits in this industry. I think by the time the industry or the PLI scheme goes towards the sunset side of the house, we will see that the industry will be significantly larger. And if the industry is built with the right unit economics in mind, as well as the right overall business structure, I do not expect that to be the crutch that the industry will need to be competitive from a global standpoint as well.
Well, the global drone market has witnessed some impressive growth. In 2018, it stood at $10.4 billion, but by 2021, it had already reached $17.7 billion. Now, projections estimate that by 2027, a few years ahead, the market could reach a staggering $51.4 billion, and by 2030, it could be an astounding $91.3 billion. Close to $100 billion is what we're talking about. Now, these figures highlight the tremendous potential for growth and the innovation in this drone industry.
$91 billion, almost $100 billion. So let's talk about what constitutes this, billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just take a look at it, within the drone industry is the defense industry, which earlier accounted for 61% of the total industry. Understandable, because that's where, drones actually started to gain popularity. But now going forward, it is likely to be less contributing. In fact, the largest contribution will come in from places like enterprise as well as logistics itself. Defense's contribution in the overall logistics industry, it's not to say that defense as an absolute level will decline. Instead, the requirement for all the other industries and the applicability of drones in all other industries will increase massively. So 61% turns into 25%, not by shrinking, but by everything else rising in an exponential manner.
As we talk about the India market always, right, growing the pie, even though defense's share will remain large. Well, drone logistics, for instance, that is a small market right now, but it is likely to be a $33 billion industry come 2030. Defense, we already told you about, $23 billion of opportunity in the enterprise section. From $7.1 billion currently, it is expected to grow to $28 billion. And similarly, consumer is expected to almost double to $6.6 billion come 2030. So that is the size of the opportunity we're talking about, Mangalam.
Well, Agnishwar, just from a business standpoint, wanted to understand what are the sources of revenues in the drone industry? Is it manufacturing? Is it components? Is it drone as a service? And what is the aggregate size?
When you take a look at the avenues for revenue, so to speak, you can broadly classify it into three: drone sales, like revenues that comes out of product sales; drone services, revenues that come out of any form of industrial, agricultural, consumer drone services that you provide to our customers; and the data monetization and how you are able to generate advisory services based on the data that is being collected by either a drone sale or a drone service. And I think that India has particularly been right now in a $3 to $4 billion market size in terms of drones as a services as well as the data aspect, because we have seen the massive adoption of drone services being utilized in agricultural spraying for pesticides and fertilizers. Farmers are currently spending 20 to 25,000 crores every single year to get their fields sprayed, and they're using inefficient manual spraying technologies, and now drone is disrupting that. So apart from that, you've seen in several events and photography and consumer segments and industrial services that drones are playing a major role. Traditionally, you would see that drone sales is considerably a smaller market compared to drone services. That entire market in 2021 was about 300 crores, and but that is now gradually increasing. And I believe that in 2023-24, the drone sales market alone would touch anywhere between 800 to 1,000 crores. And Garuda Aerospace will have a lion's share because we're already sitting on about 10,000 drones pre-booked for our agricultural Kisan drones that has been endorsed by Mahendra Singh Dhoni. And at the same time, we're also seeing progressive government policies like loan for drones and also 50% subsidies for these agricultural drones, which is driving that adoption. So I believe over the next year and a half to 2 years, the Indian drone ecosystem alone would be upwards of $3.5 billion, primarily contributed from drones as a services, especially in precision agriculture and the consumer demand.
Well, a $3.5 billion opportunity in 2 years. But Ankit, what about exports as a percentage of sales? What's the opportunity there? How much can it grow?
So we have to realize that presently our sales from international business has been very small, and the reason has been that if you see what's happened after pandemic, the ability to even travel was a very, very limited opportunity in the last few years. But now that the markets and the travel is opening up, we have set up a subsidiary in the US, and we are creating the ability to do demonstrations and to take our systems there in the US market as well. Therefore, we will see the establishment of our ability to showcase our products there in this year, and we will start seeing results out of that hopefully from the next year onwards.
Let's shift focus to the Indian market itself. Globally, the potential is what?
$91 billion, yeah.
Wow. Let's talk about India. In 2022, the Indian market was valued at $2.71 billion. The defense sector accounting for majority of it, as expected, $1.28 billion. Logistics was just $0.76 billion, and enterprise was about $500 million. Consumer at $0.1 billion, and passenger logistics, which is a possibility, would be $0.08 billion.
Well, that's hard to imagine. Passenger logistics and drones.
We've actually done that. Drones have the capability of taking people as well. But these figures are the ones that demonstrate the growing importance of drones in various sectors within India itself, Ritu.
Well, let's talk about that then. The Indian drone industry, that has immense potential to become the hub of the world when we talk about drones. Now, projections estimate that by 2030, the defense sector alone, that could be worth over 1 lakh crore rupees, while the commercial sector could be about 75,000 crores. And you have a focus on indigenization, increasing addressable market, opportunities for exports, and India's drone industry, therefore, is poised for a remarkable growth and worth about 1.8 lakh crores as of 2030, and this is as per an EY FICCI report. That's the large size of the opportunity. Like you said, defense, of course, has the largest pie.
And what do you do to get the maximum out of that opportunity? In fact, quoting from that EY FICCI report itself, they have recommendations to fully realize the potential of the Indian drone industry. Certain steps is, what they recommend, they must be taken. Allocating anywhere between 5 to 10% of the defense capital budget to drones is something that they suggest. Simplifying the tendering process, providing easy financing for drone manufacturing, and formulating policy frameworks for testing sites is something that we'll have to watch out for. Increasing localization efforts and obtaining permissions for drone demonstration in other countries. If you've flown out with a drone, you know how difficult it is to actually go through the customs there. So easing that and all the other elements will actually lead to faster growth in this industry.
Well, let me bring in the guest again. At that point, then, Agnishwar, what is the average price of a drone that you sell? And, with all of this effort, policy intervention and whatnot, is the price going to come down?
I think there is going to be a significant amount of cost reduction that will happen over the next 3 to 5 years. I don't see costs declining in the on the short term, especially in the next 6 months to maybe 2 to 3 years, primarily because the market is too huge and there are very few number of companies that can offer that at scale, at quality, and at a good price point as well. When you take the agricultural, the Garuda Kisan drone that we are selling and what we have pre-booked over 10,000 units for, we roughly sell it about 4 lakh rupees to our dealers and distributors. We have a pan-India channel network of over 700 dealers and distributors in 400 districts. They ultimately sell it to the end user, who is the rural entrepreneur, the custom hiring center, FPO, FPCs, or any form of service provider who will ultimately buy it from the dealer distributor and then provide services to the farmers, because the farmers are not the target market for our drones at all. It will be much like how not every farmer owns a tractor, not every farmer will own a drone. India has 90% of small and marginal farmers whose average landholding pattern is 1 to 1.5 acres. So they will not benefit from drone as a product. They will benefit from drones as a service. But what Garuda has done very well is in terms of introducing this Uberized gig economy network, of rural entrepreneurs who buy our drones and provide these services. And I feel that when it comes to the consumer drone that we sell, the Dhoni drone, which we will be launching in the next 15 to 20 days, named after MS Dhoni, of course, we will be in the price point of about 75 to 80,000 rupees, 75,000 to our dealer distributors, about 80 to maybe 85,000 rupees to the consumers, and that is much lesser than what you can possibly get in terms of the current market scenario. And I believe that these two are going to be major drivers to our revenues, which we foresee will touch anywhere between 400 to 420 crores optimistically this year.
We talk about the opportunity, so let's see what's on hand. Ankit, what's your current order book and how many orders do you expect this year?
When we look at the drone industry, over the last few years, we've backed several large opportunities as far as surveillance drones are concerned, which could be carried on a backpack in the field and deployed at last mile for keeping watch on our borders or for using in security surveillance, low intensity conflict applications, etc. So those were a part of, some of those procurements were a part of the regular capital procurement route. Some of them were part of the emergency procurement route that we have, or what is known as the fast track procurement route. So that fast track procurement is continuing at this point in time. At least the opportunities that were released under the fast track procurement last year are under conclusion at this point in time, and several of those opportunities were participated in by us and are currently under conclusion, some of them.
All right, hold on to that thought. What we'll do is take a short break. On the other side of this break, we will, as always, discuss the yays and the mays of
and
the drone
ask
industry.
the bigger question, and that is going to be on your screen. That is, will the Indian drone industry take off or crash land? That and more when we return.
You're watching us here on Mad About Markets. We're discussing the massive opportunity the drone industry brings, but not without its challenges.
And we'll go with the segment that we call Yay and Me, and Mangalam loves to go with the Yays, so you go with
Green
that.
drone, that's me. So let's talk about the biggest yay. You know, the efficiencies that drones bring in. As per analysts, it has the potential to up our GDP by 4 to 5% just by virtue of the efficiencies that drones bring.
But we cannot talk about that without talking about the increased security risk that is associated with drones, and that is why you see the government coming up with policy after policy to address the problem.
That's very well taken, that point. But you know, as things improve, there will be lower cost of operations that drones will bring. Things going from A to B at practically zero cost.
What is not low is the cost of purchase. The initial cost of purchase, at least, is quite high for the industry.
But that's worth it if it gives you easy access to inaccessible terrain, right?
But you know what? We're still dependent heavily on imports for this sector. We're not as Atmanirbhar as we'd like to be just yet.
What about it being environment friendly? Drones need no fuel.
We're environment friendly, sure, but we're not very privacy friendly just yet. Like I said, worries about data privacy is one of the biggest challenges to tackle for the industry.
And that's where favorable regulations and good policy will perhaps, that's a challenge that it will allow us to tackle.
But you know, the side effect of that is the e-waste that this is going to generate. Again, some of the smaller issues that we still need to highlight though.
Yes, and on the flip side, we have a lot of interesting increased use cases due to tech advancement, not only logistics, but soon people are talking about passenger drones. Imagine not having to fight any traffic.
Well, what you do have to fight is constantly changing regulations. The industry's already had to deal with quite a bit, and it has to continue doing it as the industry evolves. So let's ask the players in the ecosystem about it. Agnishwar, what have been the challenges for growth in the industry in the last few years that you've seen?
I believe that it is going to be very critical for banks, financial institutions, NBFCs, as well as the government to ensure that both loans and subsidies for the drones, especially in the near future, are consistently provided and also ramped up, because I believe that that could be a major risk. But moving forward, I think that there is going to be an even bigger risk if we do not ride the wave and consistently keep innovating. If we are happy with our products as well as our services that we provide today, about 6 months to a year from now, I think that is definitely calling for caution as well as trouble. I see a lot of startups today, especially in the drone segment, very happy and also engaging in predatory pricing and lowering down costs, especially for drones as a services on a very short-term, short-sighted approach. I believe that the market is very, very big for a lot of our players to flourish. And I think that government agencies and B2G businesses are riskier compared to B2B and B2C service segments that we are in currently. I think B2G, because of its large working capital divide, where you will probably not get paid for maybe 6 months, 7 months post, those are riskier businesses for early stage and growth stage startups to get in?
To be honest, I think, the challenges are that we have to continue the positive momentum we have on the policy side. We have to unlock policy in any areas that may still be, amenable to unlocking. We have just seen a recent unlocking that has happened with the opening up of exports for drones for civil users. We have to see that operationalized on ground. We have to see a lot of exports happening. So we currently believe that we are in a place where we have to see all the policy measures get operationalized on ground, and we see the benefits of those operationalized policy initiatives. And some areas like BVLOS and others where policy is yet to be formulated, we will see that there is progressive development in that direction from the government side. And once that is also unlocked, we will see greater utilization of these assets in our overall airspace.
Okay, and that brings us to a final bigger question on the wall right now, and that is, will the Indian drone industry take off or crash land? That question to both of you guys, Agnishwar and Ankit. Agnishwar, you go first.
I think the Honorable Prime Minister as well as the think tank in the government has realized that this particular sector could be as potential as the services industries was for India in the 80s and the 90s. And I think that is why there has been a lot of progressive government policies. I don't envision that to ever stopping in the near future. So I believe that in the next few years, provided that companies like Garuda getting a great, not just getting a great valuation, but also when we go public, adhering to all the great corporate governances, ensuring that we are staying profitable, not doing anything foolish like entering or diversifying into something else apart from our core businesses, and also staying true to ourselves. Today founders and CEOs can get very carried away in their own hype. I prefer not to do that, and I think that is something which all founders need to do in the drone industry to ensure that we realize what our limits are, but we also realize what our potential are. And if we do that, I'm sure that Indian drone industry will scale and become a crown jewel of India by 2030.
See, I see very little, risk in terms of crash landing, first of all, because, if you look at what is happening globally, and like I mentioned to you, the global wars that have happened, the overall adoption of the technology in the rest of the world, if you see our industry report, you will realize that the global revenues on drones is already at about $20 billion. And in India, we are at only about $43 billion at FY22. And this is FY or CY22 number for the global market. So the headroom that we have is very, very large. Like I said, as long as the policy continues to support, as long as we get aggressive capability, both in the government and in the industry to build technology and to certify technology in this space, I think this momentum is presently here to stay, at least for the short term, as much as I can see. And as the policy unlocks happen for other areas like BVLOS, we have already seen an unlock in exports. We have to see that operationalized. We have to see the previous policy also fully operationalized. So a lot of that will drive growth and momentum in the space. At the very best, I see that things can be, plus minus a few months, but I don't see a reason why the industry should get into a risk mode at this point in time, despite any other changes in the external environment.
Ankit, Agni, thank you so much for joining in with your perspective. But before we wrap, let's talk about the star of the show. And it's not the drone.
It's the maker of the drone, and that's who we have here. Lysander, welcome to CNBC-TV18. Thank you for providing us with this drone.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
And I understand that you're a hobbyist. I mean, when did this hobby start about, and how far has it reached now?
So I started this in 2020 when we had the pandemic.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and after watching like tons of videos, I started ordering parts, putting it together, and
how expensive is this profession? Hobby? What is it?
It is extremely expensive.
So I'm assuming you don't make a lot of these yet.
I have actually made over a dozen.
Oh,
I've just culled the fleet right now, and now I'm down to like about 5 or 6.
So you sell these and make money off it, is it?
No, so I make these drones. We use it to shoot commercials, ads in movies.
Speaking of shooting, aren't more and more movies relying on drones to get those fancy aerial shot footages we see, right?
Yes, and a lot of Hollywood movies like The Red Notice, Fast X, and a lot of regional cinema in India have begun to use drones.
Planning to work with any of them?
It's very hectic, but we are working, like as in my peers are working with a lot of production houses to shoot with FPV drones.
All right,
wonderful.
Lysander, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing us this drone. And we will leave
safely
this to
hand it back.
while we fly away from our viewers. Thank you so much for watching. See you same time next week.
Goodbye.